good does that look?
It's a meat party.
Oh, that's out on our plaza. We can smell it from inside the studio. I can't believe Pete is still sitting here.
It's amazing. I was out there before the show. I didn't even prepare for the show. I prepared for that.
He's not joking.
I'm not joking. I don't even know what all of that meat is, but it is so good. And it is the official start of summer coming up next week, so we found every excuse to bring all the best barbecue joints we could to our plaza. If you came out here, you might even get a bite.
Let's just call it what it is. There's something called meat candy that we're going to be eating shortly.
Meat candy?
Meat candy.
Candy. It's true. So we'll be out there this hour, the next hour. We also have a kind of an announcement, big announcement next hour that we might have.
We do have an announcement next hour.
Abby has a secret that she won't tell, but maybe she will later.
So you're going to stick around for the whole show, barbecue announcements, but we do want to begin with this serious story we've been following at Fox News Alert. 7 Navy sailors are missing after a U.S. warship crashes into a cargo ship off the coast of Japan.
The badly damaged destroyer towed back to its Japanese base this morning.
Ellison Barber is live in Washington, D.C. with an update. Good morning, Ellison.
Good morning to all of you. So 7 Navy sailors are missing and at least 5 are injured. The U.S. Navy's 7th Fleet says that search and rescue efforts are underway right now involving both U.S. and Japanese aircrafts as well as surface vessels. The commander of the USS Fitzgerald, Bryce Benson, is among the injured. Officials say he was airlifted to a nearby naval hospital. They airlifted 2 other sailors. As of right now, the Navy says all 3 are awake, but they will remain under observation until further notice. The ship collided with a merchant vessel about 60 nautical miles off the coast of Japan, suffering damage above and below the waterline and causing flooding in parts of the ship. The Navy says that merchant vessel had Philippine flags. This all happened yesterday around 2:30 a.m. local time. The USS Fitzgerald is a guided missile destroyer and carries Tomahawk cruise missiles. Once it gets over to land, and we understand it's made its way there now, the Navy says they'll be able to figure out the extent of the damage here. Of course, the next big question is how could this happen? The ship, the U.S. ship, was hit on the right or starboard side. The cause of the collision is still unknown. Guys?
All right, stay on it, Ellison.
A lot of
Thank
big
you
questions
so much.
there. It's a stark reminder of how projected we are around the globe.
Yes.
Our Navy does so much silently to protect shipping lanes and American interests. It's surprising stuff like this doesn't happen more often. 7 sailors certainly in our thoughts. I know they're going after finding all these guys.
Yeah, and it's just been quite an unsettling week with news.
Absolutely.
It's broke here on Wednesday. I was in for Ainsley that day, the shooting of the congressman on the baseball field. And now we're learning more about it, that names of 6 House GOP members were apparently found on a list that this gunman had made.
Yeah, in the van of this gunman, apparently the Daily Caller first broke it, were names of 6 Republican congressmen. Here they are, Trent Franks, Jeff Duncan, Scott DeJarlis, Jim Jordan, Mo Brooks, Morgan Griffith. And in addition to all being Republicans, they're all known as conservative, likely Freedom Caucus members. Right. And it looks like those could have been the targets the shooter was going
Well,
for.
we know that he asked, walking on the baseball field, to one of the congressmen who was on our show that morning, are those Republicans on the field or are they Democrats? You know, we want to bring in Governor Mike Huckabee for more on this. Governor, good to have you with us.
Well, thanks. Great to be with you. And what a sobering reality about this shooter who now we clearly know this was not some random act of violence. This guy was very thoughtful and planned. He virtually camped out by that YMCA next to the ball field for weeks, and he had a list. This was an assassination. But can I step this back a second? This is a bigger issue. This is an attempt to overthrow the elected government. And I don't want people to lose sight of the fact that what we're seeing is not necessarily an organized attempt, but a widespread attempt by people who hate the results of the election, who want to overturn it not by another election, but by violent means, by any means possible, because they reject the election. Folks, this is an absolute threat to our democracy. Forget the Russians. Forget the fact that people are saying, oh, the Russians tried to interfere with our democracy. They tried, but there's no evidence that they changed one single vote. But what we're seeing now is not a threat from the Russians, but the radicals. And we need to be a lot more afraid of the radicals who are trying to overturn a duly elected Congress and president than we are about Russians who may have attempted to do something and influence in the election, but there's no evidence yet of it.
Strong statement, Governor, for sure. Of course, the Democratic Party has moved left and left and left. Whether they lose an election to George W. Bush, win it with Barack Obama, or lose to President Trump, the radicals, the leftists, the progressives have gained more and more power in that party. Now, the guy who pulled the trigger was the only one who pulled the trigger on that attack. But the rhetoric of resist, of impeach, of fight, of take to the streets has infected the lexicon of the left. Can the leadership of that party, where is the leadership, and can they pull them back from this precipice?
I really don't know. I'd like to think that some of them would be more vocal in not just denying the veracity of this as a valuable tool, but I'd like to see them just outright say, guys, this is not the way that we change things we don't like in our government. We have an election coming up in 2018. You want to change it? Go out and get some new members of Congress in the Senate. 4 years, we have a presidential election. You can change it then. Right. But we don't do it in the meantime. And when I see all of these special prosecutors and then the radical attempts on the streets, a lot of people are getting, the heck beat out of them because they're wearing a Trump shirt. Mm-hmm. And sometimes it's more subtle. It's like they don't get their picture in the school yearbook. Again, think about what this is doing. This is bullying. It's terrorism. Because when you scare people from wearing a shirt they want to wear, putting a flag on their car, wearing a badge, or going to a rally, when they're scared to do it because they're afraid they're going to have the daylights knocked out of them by some radical leftist, then they have succeeded in changing the behavior of people in a free society. This is a threat to our way of life.
It's frightening.
Please don't let it get lost on that.
Absolutely. Well, another part of this is that it is the investigation that's been ongoing of so-called Russian interference in the election, which then turned into collusion, which now is turning into obstruction. Some people feel like the new special counsel, Bob Mueller, is not only conflicted, but in an inquisition with a wide-open investigation, ultimately trying to build and make a case for, some are saying, impeachment. Mark Levin, a famed radio talk show host, had this to say in his program. We want to get you to react to it. Take a listen.
There's absolutely no reason to have a special counsel, but it's something the Democrats want and something the Republicans capitulated to. So now we have this roving prosecutor whose subject of investigation is whatever subject he decides to investigate. Is that what constitutional government is about, ladies and gentlemen? We now have a federal prosecutor, independent of every branch of the federal government, who has as his objective to take down the President of the United States. Mr. Mueller may be investigating individuals and so forth, but his purpose for being unleashed against the President of the United States is to make the case for impeachment, not indictment. This is very, very important to understand.
Do you agree, Governor?
Well, I do agree, and I think that if you look at this carefully, what we're doing by the special prosecutor and the wide scope and the fact that we're hiring dozens of lawyers who, by the way, have contributed tens of thousands of dollars to Democrat candidates, and that's very concerning. So there may be an immediate conflict. It's apparent that this investigation is all focused on the Trump administration and the personnel, many of whom were not even government employees at the time that they're being investigated. Right. So here's the question. Are we sending 6 fire trucks to put out the flickering flame of a candle, when in fact there are some raging fires that were never addressed, like the abuses of the IRS, Hillary's deleted emails, the 20% of our uranium that was sold off to the Russians, the selling of influence for contributions to the Clinton Foundation. I mean, where was the outrage for all of that? I didn't remember it. And now this is all based on what even prominent Democrats have said. There's no shred of evidence that there was a connection between the president as candidate or as president and the Russians. None. So why are we doing this? And to what end? To what purpose?
Yeah.
I mean, I think Americans ought to truly be alarmed.
One thing liberals are excited about, it seems, is this fascination with Mike Pence. And could this be a sort of plan by Mike Pence to try and assume the head position in our country, being president, no longer being vice president? You know, how do you respond to this? Politico, Washington Post, all responded to this. You know, man on a wire, Mike Pence's tightrope act from Politico. Washington Post, Pence's balancing act as Trump's number 2 shows signs of strain amid White House turmoil. How do you respond to this?
I can tell you that there's more creativity on the left in the media making up these stories about, like, Mike Pence, and there is combined between Walt Disney and George Lucas. I mean, they're pretty creative guys. Look, Mike Pence has two things that a lot of these leftists would never understand: honor and integrity. Mike Pence, I know him well. He's one of the most decent and truly committed individuals to what's right that I've ever known. He's a great vice president, and I'll guarantee you the last thing he's doing is sitting around and plotting his takeover. He's doing everything he can to help this president, and I'll tell you something else about Mike Pence that many of us can appreciate. You can be assured that every day he is on his knees before God, humbly asking for the strength to be a servant to this country. And anything to the contrary of that is utter nonsense.
It's so true. To write a story like that is to ignore every utterance, every action, everything the vice president has done in support of President Trump. He's never once insinuated anything other than complete loyalty.
Welcome to mainstream media today. Welcome. Governor, great to have you with us. Have a wonderful Father's Day weekend.
Thank you, Governor.
Thank you very much.
All right, up next, a teenage girl tells her boyfriend to commit suicide, and he did. Now she's been sentenced to 20 years in prison. The story that has parents across the country talking this morning: does the punishment fit the so-called crime?
And the right takes a page out of the left's playbook, stealing the show at Shakespeare in the Park, shutting down.
All right, welcome back. A story a lot of people are talking about this morning. A Massachusetts teen who told her boyfriend to kill himself in texts found guilty of manslaughter, now facing up to 20 years in prison. Obviously, this is a huge stalker. So many things to unpack. Horrible
story. So the girl, I believe, is now 20.
Right.
She faces 20 years in prison. But as the story goes, I mean, I don't know all the nuts and bolts of it, but was told this kid to kill himself and to put himself in the car. I guess she was there at the scene. He gets out of the car and she says, "Get back in." Watches him die. And the question is, you know, she didn't actually kill him, but she obviously told him to kill himself and didn't do anything when he was dying. So there are a lot of legal questions. Of course, I always go in with the emotions of it. If this were my child that was killed, I would want whoever did that, whoever told them to kill themselves, I would want them in prison for their entire life. I mean, that's just where I come in, though, as a woman.
Yeah, so these are teenagers texting hundreds, almost thousands of texts and phone calls. I don't know if she was on the scene or not, but I think it may have been over a text, said, because he was fumigating his own car, got out, he texted her and told her, she said, "Get back in the car," and apparently heard him, his last gasps in the car. And so that's an emotional, terrible, terrible thing to hear from teenagers, and who knows the emotions involved. But, you know, you've got a legal background, Todd. I don't know, you know, manslaughter, is this typical? Because usually it's a physical action of manslaughter, not words like "get back in the car."
She was also so young.
She was, but you also have to keep in mind, a lot of times courts, if they want, you can sort of use manslaughter as a catch-all. Obviously, it's not murder. There are certain elements that need to be met in order for it to be murder. None of those elements are met here. But if somebody dies and there's some sort of causality that you can point to, manslaughter is that catch-all. Now, I know you're not going to want to hear this because I know you are very anti-courts making law, but in the law, when you sort of sit there and write a legal brief, you have two things more or less that you can go to. You have case precedent and you have statute, okay? Courts make law. That's what court precedent is. And so, yes, we really haven't touched upon this type of topic
I was going to
before.
say, what is the precedent then?
Well,
If someone
texts are so new. I mean, this isn't something that you're going to have case law back into the 1800s on. So what the lawyers do and what the judge will do is sort of try to fit old law to new technology, and that's where we get our current law, current precedent out of, and then it'll be put into statute if they want to change it.
And she now faces up to 20 years. I mean, we've all heard, we probably all said it as teenagers, "Hey, I hope you kill yourself," or I hope this person gets hit by a car, right? That's not murder or manslaughter. That's a missive that you say irresponsibly. In this particular case, it was very direct, and does that matter in the case of a court?
We're also living in different times. When we
Horrible.
think about when we were growing up, we didn't have social media. And now, I mean, I have little sisters that are both in middle school and high school, and I see some of the things that are written, the bullying that goes on. Any parent out there knows it has gotten so out of control that you're right, Todd, we're living in different times. And the legality of it, we're having to deal with unprecedented moments of, what do you do?
In the past, you had to pass a note or call someone on a landline, and usually you'd get their parents first and be like, "Can I talk to so-and-so?" Right. You know, now it's direct text messaging and stuff that's immediately erased, and Snapchat. There's no doubt that parents today face a whole set
Public
of
shaming on
complications,
Facebook and Instagram.
and that's why this has caught on so, it's gotten so much interest, is because people are saying, "Hey, how would I fall in on this?"
So what do you think? I mean,
as
as we're talking about this, I'm sure there are a lot of emotions out there that have been following this story. Was this the right punishment? I know there's the legal side of this,
Right.
Todd, but there's, of course, also where I'm coming from, the emotional side of it.
Absolutely.
As a parent would see it.
There are no
So,
winners in this story.
No winners. You're so administration's Cuba policies and honoring our next guest. Their son was killed after the plane he was shot down on by the Cuban Air Force. They join us live to react to the next policy next.
And this woman right here claims she won $43 million at a casino, but they only gave her a steak dinner. That ain't fair. Now.
Some quick headlines for you now. Border Patrol agents raiding a desert camp and arresting 4 men suspected of being in the U.S. illegally. The nonprofit camp in Arizona is designed to harbor illegals just miles from the border. Camp leaders slamming the Border Patrol agents despite being notified prior to the raids and refusing to cooperate. And Department of Homeland Security officials saying the future of the Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals program still undecided by the Trump administration. The Obama-era program allows nearly 788,000 illegal immigrants to apply for work permits and live in the U.S. Pete, over to you.
Thanks, Todd. All right, President Trump standing up for justice as he rolls back the Obama administration's Cuban initiatives and honors the victims of Cuban military crimes.
Those victims included Mario de la Pena Jr. and Carlos Costa. We are honored to be joined today by Mario's parents, Miriam and Mario, and Carlos's sister, Mirta, what they represent to everybody, and especially to the Cuban people. So your children did not die in vain, believe me.
That was President Trump yesterday. Mario and Miriam de la Pena's son was killed, him right here, when his plane was shot down by the Cuban Air Force in 1996. They were honored at the president's speech yesterday, and they join us now live via Skype. Miriam and Mario, thank you very much for joining us this morning. First of all, tell us a little bit about your son's story, what happened, to catch up our viewers on that.
Certainly. Our son was a 24-year-old young American boy. And his life dream was to become a pilot, a commercial pilot. So that's what he pursued from an early age. And he was very, very happy. He already had an internship with American Airlines in his last year of the university. And he volunteered as a pilot, search and rescue mission, doing civil patrol, air patrol in the Florida Straits, because there were so many Cuban rafters who were dying at sea, being eaten by sharks. And so that was he was just very happy doing that and fulfilling his career. But on February 24th, 1996, the Cuban government decided to just shoot them down out of the sky in international airspace, killing 4 innocent people.
They shot down. It was an unarmed propeller plane shot down by their Air Force, condemned by the UN Security Council, the UN Commission on Human Rights, and it was a spy that gave up the information about this, a spy that was eventually released by former President Barack Obama as well. So, but what you heard from President Trump yesterday was a reversal of President Obama's Cuba policy, a retightening a reality that was a one-sided deal. What was your reaction in light of, so many who have suffered for freedom, including your son? What was your reaction to President Trump's approach yesterday?
It was music to our ears, because we felt so betrayed in the prior administration when the killer, when one of the people responsible for the murder of our 4 loved ones down here in South Florida was returned to Cuba, to Raul Castro, the tyrant, on a silver platter. And he was serving a life sentence in the United States after a very fair 7-month trial. He was found guilty of conspiracy to commit murder in the case of our son. And that was the only piece of legal, criminal law that we were able to.
Gerardo Hernandez.
His name is Gerardo Hernandez, and he's back in Cuba. He was he was the head of Spy Network.
The spy was.
the WASP network.
That ultimately gave up the name of that patrol that your son Mario was a part of when it was shot down. The president said he will not have died in vain, and that this is a new day. A one-sided deal is over. I know it was, as you said, it was music to your ears, and hopefully an opportunity to truly bring freedom to that island, which is exactly what those people on those rafts that your son was attempting to save were looking to do in 1996. So sometimes things come full circle, and we appreciate you sharing your powerful story and staying committed to this cause.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Absolutely. Miriam and Mario de la Peña, their son Mario, killed in 1996. The president recognized him yesterday. Thank you very much for joining us. We appreciate it.
Thanks to you.
All right. Well, a Fox News alert. The gunman who opened fire on the Republican baseball team had a list, and all 6 names on it were conservative Republicans. The reporter who broke the story joins us live. Then Professor of Law Jonathan Turley is on deck, plus as you see Geraldo Rivera and Trish Regan here live. And of course, my favorite, Brisket.
You have a personal relationship with a witness central to the case, James Comey, you shall not serve. And then it describes what a personal relationship is. Literally in the statute, it said it's either a relative or a close friend. Well, that's the definition of Comey and Mueller. It's incomprehensible to me that Mueller was selected and that he accepted the position. The conflict of interest is flagrant.
That was our own Greg Jarrett earlier in the program. Now we're going to bring in Jonathan Turley, a constitutional law professor at George Washington. Professor, thanks for joining us this morning. You heard Greg Jarrett there. There's a lot of folks calling into question the independence of Bob Mueller. What do you say on that?
Well, first of all, I've said earlier that I did not think that Mueller was a good choice. I thought that Rosenstein used poor judgment. Both Mueller and Comey have a long-standing professional relationship. They're both part of the lore and legacy of the Justice Department, stemming from this shared historical moment they had at the hospital bedside of John Ashcroft. They're tied by that moment by long service. Having said that, the Department of Justice ethics rules have not been really interpreted to mean professional relationships are conflicts in that sense. I don't think that Rosenstein would view it that way. I don't think the DOJ would. What concerns me about Mueller is the same thing that concerns me about Rosenstein. I've said before that Rosenstein needs to recuse himself. I don't see any gray area there. He's not just a witness. He is perhaps the witness on the obstruction issue. And the irony is that this leak from the special counsel's investigation that they're now looking at Donald Trump as a target of obstruction seemed calculated to protect Mueller, but in doing so, they undercut Rosenstein because he's now would be at the top of that witness list. But Mueller may have the same problem, not because of his previous professional relationship with Comey, which I think is troubling, but Mueller reportedly met with Trump the day before his appointment to interview for the FBI job. Now, it strikes me as odd if he sat down with the president to replace Comey and the president didn't say anything as to why he fired Comey or why he felt the need to have a new FBI director. That makes Mueller himself a potential witness.
So, you know, you have members, some on the left who, as you pointed out, they're really hoping that out of this investigation comes some obstruction of justice that leads to an impeachment. So Ken Starr was speaking out about this. On Thursday, he's the former independent counsel who investigated, you remember, under the Clinton years. He knows all too well about all of this. And he says, as far as he knows now, with everything he's seen, there has been no obstruction of justice. Here's what he said.
Obstruction of justice is really a very hard crime to make out. It's not just you want the investigation to go away, you suggest that the investigation goes away. You've got to take really affirmative action.
To be clear, we're not certain that photo is of Ken Starr, but his words speak for himself.
We're going to correct that if that is false. But what do you make? I mean, those are some pretty strong words coming from someone who knows a lot of what he speaks.
Well, first I want to know what happened to Ken Starr's hair, and that's the first thing
He's
that
not
we
happy
need to get to the bottom of. Okay, Ken Starr and I actually were in court together in the Clinton Clinton impeachment because I represented the former attorney generals in that fight. I agree with him. I've said for a while now that people are getting ahead of their skis on obstruction. This is not easy to prove. I've never seen a case ever prosecuted on this type of evidence. It doesn't mean that there shouldn't be an investigation. It doesn't mean that a case cannot be made, but they're a long shot from that right now. I think that what we're going to have is clearly a special counsel investigation looking at obstruction. The question is who's going to do it. And I think that it's incumbent upon Mueller to answer these questions as to, did he have a discussion about Comey in the Oval Office? If he did, I would be floored that he was not only offered the special counsel position, but accepted it.
And Jonathan, as you know, professional responsibility is kind of like the overarching topic we're talking about here today. And nobody, when you're in law school, really pays attention to it. It's kind of like a thrown away subject. It's kind of important now, isn't it?
Yeah, it is, and hopefully they do pay attention to it.
I got a B. I got a B. I should have done better. What can I say?
At least you're honest.
Not so much about it.
At least you have personal responsibility.
Professor Charlie, thank you so much.
A B is a very good grade.
All
good
right,
for
appreciate
you.
it.
Thank you for being with us, Professor.
Okay.
Is a B a good grade? B is a decent grade.
I would have
Maybe
taken.
he was a generous grade.
Hey, I would have taken a B in any of my classes, Todd. All right, I do want to get to some other headlines we're following this morning, starting with this. Rescues wrapping up overnight after a ferry with 48 people on board strikes a jetty, injuring 6 people. A woman on board capturing the scene where officials say the rough water conditions made it hard to remove passengers near Cape Cod, Massachusetts. One person now suffering serious injuries was airlifted by a Coast Guard helicopter. Still not clear, though, what caused that crash. And Republican outrage unfolding on stage. 2 protesters interrupting New York public theaters' Julius Caesar performance last night, which features a Donald Trump look-alike being assassinated.
Political violence against the right. This is unacceptable. You cannot. Get off the stage.
All right. Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to pause.
You are inciting terrorists. The blood of Steve Scalise is on your hands.
With the 2 protesters, Jack Posobiec and Laura Loomer, being thrown out by security immediately, with the play continuing to go on. Well, the final performance of the play is still expected to go on tomorrow. And a woman is suing a casino for offering her a steak dinner instead of handing over her $43 million jackpot winnings. New York's Resorts Casino denying her the cash, saying it was a result of a glitch and exceeding prize amounts on her machine. Well, now she's crying foul, saying that the game was rigged. And those are some of your headlines. Going outside now to Rick with some barbecue. And I'm stuck in the studio. I can smell it, Rick. I am so jealous. So bring me some in.
Well, at least your clothes are going to stay smelling good.
That's true. That's a great thing.
The rest of our clothes are going to be ruined here. Summer is heating up here on the plaza with our big barbecue bash. First up, we have Tony Matassa with BarbecueGuys.com firing up the grill. Tony, welcome back.
Yes, thank you for having us.
Tell us what we have going on here.
All right, so we've got our Blaze Professional Grill fired up. And these larger grills like this are perfect for, we have a whole cochon de lait, which is a whole pig. We're roasting them on the rotisserie in the back. In the 2 smoker boxes on the sides, we have some sugar cane and pecan wood, which is what they would traditionally use. We're keeping it as traditional as possible.
And you put in these smoke boxes right here in the grill.
In the smoker boxes that are on the side.
Okay, and then what's going on here?
In here we have some root vegetables with some of the au jus and some stock from earlier. And so you baste with this. And then we also have some rendered bacon fat that we baste with every now and then just to keep it healthy. We want to keep it healthy as possible.
How long does this need to cook?
These go about 2.5, 3 hours.
All right, we're going to eat this later on in the show?
We will be eating this later on, absolutely.
All right, we're going to eat more of this. Tony Matassa, thank you. Todd, no, but this one we have to wait. It's not done yet. Todd, Pete, send it over to you guys.
We've got Scott and we've got Fred, and right before we went on, like 2 seconds ago, they're like, which one of these do you want? To which Pete and I responded, yes. Both. We want them all. Just give it to them all. So what are we making here?
I have sliced beef brisket here, pork loin, and then we also have our own pork ribs.
And you guys are from Texas Smoke Barbecue, which is where?
In Jefferson, New Jersey.
I see trophies over there, so you must be good at what you do.
Absolutely.
Okay. And so what's the secret? What's the secret to good barbecue?
What's the secret? Well, to the pork loin, it's the marinade. You know, regular barbecue is done on premise, and it's smoked for about 10 to 12 hours.
10 to 12 hours of smoking.
Yep, and that's how you get perfection, just like this. We'll show you a nice piece just came off out of the smoker.
You're supposed to ask questions.
Could a regular person do that on their grill? No, how do you do this?
No, not on the grill. That's a bark. That's our own homemade rub. We rub that, then we smoke it for about 10 to 12 hours, and that's how you get that nice barking bliss.
How'd you guys get into this barbecue game, being Jersey guys?
Well, I went on a lot of business trips working for my former employer, going down to Texas, and I got to realize what barbecue was all about. Expecting to get hot dogs and hamburgers, I got brisket, I got pork, I got ribs. I said, let me go check this out. This was 20-some years ago.
And I'm going to take it to the people in New Jersey, and they get the authentic thing.
Yeah.
For real.
Yeah.
I love it. This is great. Well, thank you guys for coming out this morning.
My pleasure.
I'm going to keep eating out here on the plaza all morning.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Abby, I may bring a sandwich in for you.
Pete, you know, you are so good at bringing me in bites of barbecue.
I do take care
Please
of you.
keep that going today.
I will.
I'll be waiting. All right, I want to get to a Fox News alert. The gunman who opened fire on the Republican baseball team had a list. All 6 names are on it. They're Republicans. The reporter who broke that story is joining us live. That is next. Plus, it was just your average, ordinary street sign, but then vandals got a hold of it and wanted to make it great again. It's coming up.
A party over there, wave your hands in the air, shake the dairy, yeah. These 3 words mean you're getting busy. Whoop, there it is, Hitman.